Now that I have the Powerglide transmission at home, I should be able to speed up the process decently enough to get this project done in a much quicker fashion, so we can get the other transmission out of the 64 Impala SS and get this cleaned up and refitted Powerglide into the car. I'm going to be doing a bit more cleaning right now. It's going to be the main planetary gear set, including your reverse ring gear over here, the reverse clutch plates, the friction plates attached to this over here. You see it all when the transmission is reassembled, and of course your low and direct planetary assemblies inside there. There's lots of information on the web about how these works, and some very excellent productions put out by General Motors themselves out of all times from the early 50s, showing just how the Powerglide system works. So there's really no need to get into that right now for the sake of time. And also, of course, the input shaft, that's where the torque converter would attach to, and then this attaches to the friction discs inside the high drum to give you high gear as well. Various bushings to be checked and serviced and things, and of course there's these steel sealing rings that are going to be replaced as well, and there's also some other rings all over the place which will change. And anyway, the washing pan is a 204R sump pan. Lots of room in it. Nice little catch basin too. So away we go. We'll do some. Remember, never any cloths with lint on them. Just generally a good spray and we'll get off that dirt. You can already see it down there. Brake cleaning itself is generally perfect in cases like this, when the transmission is just basically a simple cleaning up and changing a rubber seal, so we did not have any major failures involved here. Like you can see, it's pretty clean, all the surfaces. No real dirt coming off of anywhere. In the case of a transmission that would have had a major failure, you want to take a brush, a gentle bristle brush, and then just gently clean off your surfaces, and then spray again. Wipe with as lint-free rag as you can, and then spray again to make sure any chances of lint or bits of lint will be taken off. See, didn't lift the dirt, but there is just a bit of dirt in there. Nothing much to really scare you, but it's just to make it super clean, and you know that the job will turn out just fine. So we'll just basically go over all the surfaces like that. And we'll be back in a little bit. Here are the reverse frictions and steels. The steels have all been cleaned up. They're in very good condition to be reused. There's not even going to be any sanding done on them because they're not even excessively shiny. They're in very good condition. It's always best to leave well enough alone. So like I said, they're in very good condition to replace. You can see there again is the reverse friction that was showing signs of some bad wear. It's all flaked and it's all bumpy and everything, worn away. Well, here's one that's still in good condition. General rule of thumb is if one's bad, you replace them all. So, and there's the remainder of the brake cleaner. You can just see parts that look clean really weren't so clean after all. So never take any chances. Cleanliness is the most important thing when working on these automatic transmissions. Doesn't matter if it's a simple 2-speed like this or one of the much more modern 6, 7, 8 or even 9-speed automatics. One of the first steps to take, as mentioned in my past clips on rebuilding automatic transmissions, is that you have to soak your frictions. Always got to soak them for at least 15 to 20 minutes in fresh transmission oil. It just gets absorbed into the material, because you never want to start these things off dry. Because when you start a transmission, or when you start the car, many parts of the transmission are spinning and whirling along. For example, in a Powerglide, this ring gear over here for the reverse clutch will be spinning around. That's part of the characteristic Powerglide whine that people hear. And if these clutches got absolutely no oil in them upon startup, they're going to chafe and burn pretty quick. Even though, in all honesty, you would have, when you would have filled up the transmission, you would have had quite a bit of oil in the pan to start with, so they would have gotten a partial soak. But better to be safe than sorry, regardless. So get them into oil, get them soaking. We'll do these first. We'll get our high clutches in there afterwards, because we're not going to be ready for those for a while. But like I said, at least 15 minutes. Because this way it just keeps getting absorbed and absorbed into the paper material of the friction discs. Flip them over. Make sure nobody goes hungry here. Spread them out. I'll let them sit for a little bit. Then once we get the reverse clutch put in, we'll be able to do an air pressure check when it's all assembled to make sure the seal's in properly. You don't want to do it right now because there's always a chance of overextending it and popping the clutch past the edges of the cylinder, and then when the springs try to push it back in, you'll tear the seals instantly. So a little bit of things you have to remember when you're doing that, but on we go. Well, while those clutches are busy soaking in the fresh transmission oil, we'll take a quick look at the case. Actually, maybe we'll hoist it up onto the table. Be a little bit easier to see things. In case if there's any little things that we might have missed, like any seals or anything that might be needed, which we know the shifter shaft seal has got to go on, so that'll get smacked on in a couple of seconds. And see if there's any other bushings or anything like that. I thought there might be a bushing going through the shifter shafts, because these are major leak points on these things, but I don't see any evidence of one that goes through there, so it's just riding on aluminum there and getting lubed by the oil. But this thing looks pretty much ready to go over here. Interestingly enough, bushings will absorb oil as well too. Now these are fresh new bushings, as you saw that we were putting in. There's one right over here. So we're going to put a little bit of Vaseline onto that, mix in with a little bit of transmission oil, so that'll give it a fighting chance once the car is put into gear. Now the output shaft obviously doesn't spin around until the car is moving, but you want to give it every bit of a chance that you possibly can. Never ever use ordinary chassis grease or anything like that on transmission parts, because it will not dissolve. It will end up being clumps and plugging up passages in the valve body and causing all sorts of aches and pains in the transmission. Only lubricants like transmission assembly lube, Vaseline, or of course transmission oil itself, or even Lucas transmission lube too can be used. But like I said, nothing in the way of chassis grease is ever to be used inside automatic transmissions when you're putting them together. Just dab a little bit of Vaseline stuff on it. Another thrust surface for the rear Torrington bearing on the output shaft over there as well too. Then we'll dab a touch of transmission oil onto it. There we go. Can't ask for a better soupy mess of lubricant on the transmission. There we go. Okay, we're now going to place in the shifter shaft seal. You have to be pretty careful of, because there's a few bumps and lumps over here on the case, so you got to try to get it nice and flush in there. So there it goes. It's a nice flat piece of hard metal over there, so you can knock it in so you don't put any dents or anything. If you put any dents into it, you cause stress and strain points on it, which will wear a lot quicker and then start to leak on you pretty soon. And like I said, these are famous for leaking when they're left parked. There we go, that's in nice and flush. We'll take a look at it now. Move it towards the light. There we go. In as it should be. And we'll get some lubricant into there as well too, but not quite right away because we don't want to attract any dirt. It's not quite ready to assemble this part yet, but at least we know that seal is in. It's a lot easier to move around the case when it's empty, obviously, so that's one more little thing tackled. Never ever be ashamed to use the book or anything like that when you're working on something that you don't work on every day. Better be a little bit humble, not take any chances. I know what the correct stacking order of certain parts are. I have pretty much a decent idea, but I just wanted to verify this in my own mind to be absolutely sure. Like for the reverse clutch, for example, the pieces that we have here, the right cushion spring that goes in on the end, and then of course you put a regular steel, and then you start stacking them up with friction, steel, etc. But it's always good to be sure to be safe. You never know. So just a helpful tip. After I guess if you're doing this every day, it's just, well, no pun intended, automatic to you what parts go where and things. But never ever be ashamed to use the book or call up somebody, the old phone a friend question thing, and to make sure that things go right and go smooth. So we're going to get on with this in a second to start stacking the reverse clutch parts. Now it's pretty interesting. Parts can sometimes tell a story upon themselves. Upon looking closer at this ring gear for reverse, I noticed, especially once it was cleaned off, just how rusty the surface is over here. Nothing detrimental. It's not going to hurt it or anything. That's because the transmission was running before. So when I was looking in the instructions of how to install the reverse plates, it says that this little notch over here is supposed to be installed at the 7 o'clock position. So just doing a quick check, I noticed, you can see a little bit of rust down there, a little bit of rust down there. I honestly wonder if this transmission might have been sitting in water at one point, or a good amount of water might have gotten into it. Didn't seem to affect the way it was driving on the car when it was taken out of the 64 Pontiac upon which it came from. Yes, the numbers do match exactly for the SS Impala that it's going into, because it's virtually the same manufacturing date and stuff, and the same engine family, 327 250 horse. So it's just something interesting to note. Never know what you're going to find. Never, never, ever know. Alright, we're going to try to do this as best as we can with only one hand. Like I keep saying, I really should invest in a tripod or some sort of mechanism to hold the camera, but it'll happen one day when I finally get disgusted enough. But anyway, here we go. Wave washer. 7 o'clock position for the steel. Friction disc. Another steel. Friction. I've taken transmissions apart in the past where they've had like 2 or 3 frictions together and then a bunch of steels together. They work, but of course they would burn out in pretty short order. People are trying. They made a good attempt, but sometimes things happen. Cool noise. Cool sound. And now just the pressure plate. There we go. And then of course all that will just remain will be that snap ring. And away we will go from there. I will need 2 hands for that. Actually, it looks like we will be able to get the spring with one hand, I think, anyway. Yep, there we go. The retainer spring is in. Let's just double check that. We have a little bit of a clearance issue over here. We'll have to go back and check and see. Nope. Nope, my bad. Nope. Do have clearance in there. These things are turning. Object is, these things have to be able to turn. So you could definitely tell that there was wear, because there was a lot more clearance when the old plates were in. seems to be quite a bit, but believe me, it's a heck of a lot less. There's no spec actually given for 64 and up of how much clearance you have. I believe 63 said 0.130, which looks pretty much what like this would be over here, just by eyeballing it, but there's certainly more than enough travel in the piston in this to engage reverse with no problem, which we'll see in a couple of minutes when we give it a air pressure check. Sorry, camera's flying all over the place. I'm trying to do two things at once here. But we'll get set up for the air pressure check and we'll take it from there. We're going to do air pressure checks of the reverse clutch. See the plates moving. Maybe we can get from the front over here. Let's see if I can position the camera and the transmission a little bit better to do that. But there's a test hole. That's where the fluid gets presented into the back of the clutch to apply. Now I know this clutch is working pretty decently because I only have about 40 pounds of air in the air pig, and these actually engage with well over, well, I'd say close to 200 psi in the Powerglide, so we know the seals are in properly, but we're going to try to reposition this in a second. Well, we'll see how well this works. I can't really see anything. Hopefully the camera's going to pick it up. Hear it moving. We have to be good, yeah. Well, not stupid camera, stupid me. The red low battery warning light's been flashing at me for a while, so I was too lazy to run upstairs and get the spare battery. So it died me in mid-shot, but that's the apply hole for the reverse clutch over here. And just another quick note. Always quick notes, people. Always quick notes when we're working on these things. Always take these little steps to check, double check all these little bitty things, because like I said, you never know. One tiny little misstep. It's generally not the big things that get you when you're working on these transmissions, but just as an aside, just as a quick example, it's always going to be little bitty things like these tiny little O-rings and washers and stuff that might end up tripping you up. But again, the exercise of doing these clutch pressure checks is because, let's say you put the transmission in, it doesn't seem to be shifting quite well, or it's shifting slow, something's going on. You know you've done your clutch pressure checks, so it's probably something in your valve body or something related, which can generally be fixed with the transmission still in the car and things like that. Because if you have a rolled seal or something wrong with like I said, one of the seals of one of the clutches, as Corvair Wild found out with that transmission that he had redone by that place that cost him over $1,300, a seal rolled within 500 miles. He never got a penny back for it, so we ended up repairing it, for those of you who watch the channel. So air pressure checks and things like that can always reveal problems. You can catch them right away, because nobody's perfect, things happen, and again, the thing is check, and double check with these all the time, because you never ever know. Now for the reverse ring gear install. Helpful hints is try to line up the lugs of your friction discs, one on top of the other, so hopefully you won't have to struggle and spin your ring gear around too much, because these grooves have to line with the lugs. But we're going to see how lucky we're going to have one-handed over here. Yeah, we need a tripod, we need a tripod, we need a tripod. I will need both hands for this. I'll be back in a minute. I sometimes wish there was an actual time thing showing on the bottom of the camera when it's filming to show how long you've lapsed between taking clips, because as soon as I had both hands, this thing went on ridiculously fast. I'd say within 7 or 8 seconds. And notice that there's a reinforcing ring that's been put around this assembly over here. I guess the manufacturer felt it wasn't strong enough. But yeah. Anyway, the reverse ring gear is in. Now we're going to put our rear planetaries in. Okay, we're going to install the output shaft and planetary gears. Let's see how well the camera will pick this up. Have a little bit of lubrication on the planetaries. They'll get fully oiled once this unit's installed. As you remember, we already put some transmission oil and Vaseline onto the output shaft bushing, as you saw. This will be a matter of engaging this the ring gear. It's easier said than done. Well, guess we got it on the first smack over here. Beautiful. Now what we'll do is, yeah, there we go, there's more evidence. It looks like there was water inside of this thing. Planetaries. That's what gives the Powerglide, again, that characteristic whine when you have it in neutral or park. Because these are just freewheeling in there. Now we'll get some oil put into there. Alright, what are we up to here? I thought my clutch spring tool would fit this over here, but it's made for a larger diameter clutch drum, or just clutch piston, meaning like a turbo 350 or 700 R4 or turbo 400. It wasn't made for the smaller Powerglide series over here, so I have to get this snap ring out and this piston spring, and so we have to do what we have to do. I kind of sort of have things under control over here with the tie wraps and stuff, and whole concoction of C-clamps and a garden trowel and a door hinge, and we'll see how this adventure is going to work over here. We gotta do what we gotta do. I'll slowly tighten up the clamps. We just have enough of that snap ring exposed, like we have right now. A little bitty bit more. Slowly and deliberately, because we don't want to bend anything. And we just gently work things out. That's it. Just about all exposed. Let's see if we have enough over here now. Snapping pliers have certainly seen better days. Patience is a virtue. We've had to take things apart in the middle of a field sometimes when we've had next to nothing to work with. But we get the job done. That hair more. That's it. Okay. Go. Myself a little screwdriver now. Done. Now I can release this nice and slow. There we go. No fuss, no muss. Nothing scratched, nothing damaged. Yeah, furnace is still working here. Still pretty cold. Hopefully the little car season will be here before too long. Most of the salt's been washed away. I had the rag underneath here because you do not want to scratch this thrust bearing surface over here. Not at least I don't want to put any scratches on this. So we're safe. We just basically have to cut this away, which we'll do in a second, and we'll be right back, okay? Snip. Snip. Parts go flying, but not too far. In the bag right away. We don't want to just leave something and then come grab it later on. Little parts always have a tendency to disappear, especially when there are a multitude of loose little springy thingies here. I don't know how many there are, but there's certainly a heck of a lot of these things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. 24 little springs, it looks like. Yeah, we don't want to lose any of those, so we're going to get rid of them right away. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and 24. Now, if these are all accounted for, this piston's moving very easily, so something's telling me that it seals pretty rock hard on this one too. Set the camera down for a second. We'll need both hands over here. Usually those pistons, you have to kind of sort of force them out when the rubber seals are still supple. These look like they're not too supple, just like we found in the reverse drum. Actually, not really too bad, all things considered. Not horrible, horrible. Certainly has life left in it. It's in a lot better condition than the reverse clutch seal was. Oh yeah, it definitely has flexibility left with the inner one as well. Careful not to score things over here. You don't want to score stuff. And just gently pick it around, and there it comes. Around, up and over, and there we go. Out it comes. And this one too has got life left in it. Definitely. Generally, if you can twist them like that at room temperature, they're still in good condition. But we're still going to change them in either case. The ones in the reverse, I'm afraid if we would have twisted them even a little bit, they would have snapped. So we got this apart. Just has to be cleaned up now. The new seals are on order already. Seals go face down in here. Lip seal down because they get the hydraulic pressure coming in through here. So obviously pushes this piston up, which then applies the clutch parts. Alright, we'll see you later. Enough blah 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 for now.